neighborhood and the city and the world reinvent itself continually over the years. For all that, the old hotel remained essentially the same. It had never been terribly grand, had always had more permanent residents than transient guests, and had from its earliest days drawn persons in the arts. Brass plaques flanking the entrance recorded some of the Paddington's more prominent tenants, including the writers Stephen Crane and Theodore Dreiser and the Shakespearean actor Reginald French. John Steinbeck had spent a month there during a period of marital disharmony, and Robert Henry, the Ashcan School artist, had stayed at the Paddington before relocating a few blocks south and east at Gramercy Park. More recently, the hotel had drawn touring British rock stars who seemed less inclined to destroy rooms here than in other American hotels, either out of respect for its traditions or from a sense that the damage they did might go unnoticed. 2 of them had died on the premises, one murdered by a drifter he'd brought back to his room, the other more conventionally of a heroin overdose. Classical music was represented as well, by at least 2 of the permanent residents and the occasional performer on tour. An octogenarian pianist, Alfred Hertel, whose annual Christmas concert at Carnegie Hall was always sold out, had occupied an apartment on the top floor for over 40 years. At the opposite end of the same floor lived the aging diva Sonia Brigandi, whose legendary temperament survived the decline of her legendary soprano voice. Once in a while, one or both of them would leave their doors open, and one would play what the other would sing, thrilling or annoying the other residents with something from Puccini or Verdi or Wagner. Other than that, they didn't speak. Rumors abounded that they'd had an affair, that they'd been rivals for some other tenant's affections. He was said to be gay, although he'd been married twice and had children and grandchildren. She had never married, and was said to have had lovers of both sexes. And both of them were supposed to have slept with Edgar Lee Horvath, who had never slept with anyone. Except for his bears, of course. It was Horvath, the founder of pop realism, who had painted the Paddington Bear over the lobby fireplace. He'd taken rooms in the hotel in the mid-60s, shortly after the success of his first one-man show, and had lived there until his death in 1979. The painting had been a gift to the hotel, given early in his stay, and with the sharp increase in value of Horvath's work since his death, it was probably worth close to $1 million. And there it was, hanging right there in plain sight, in an essentially unguarded lobby. Of course, a person would have to be crazy to steal it. Edgar Horvath had painted a whole series of teddy bears, from bedraggled early Stieff creations to contemporary plush creatures, and a teddy bear of one sort or another was invariably present in his portraits and landscapes and interiors. His desert landscapes, done during a brief stay in Taos, show bears sprawled at the foot of an enormous cactus, or straddling a fence rail, or propped up against an adobe wall. But as far as anyone knew, he had only painted Paddington once, and that painting hung famously in the hotel's famously threadbare lobby. It was there for the taking, but so what? If you hooked that painting, how and to whom would you sell it? I knew all that, but old habits die hard, and I've never been able to look at something of great value without trying to figure out a way to rescue it from its rightful owner. The painting was in a massive frame of gilded wood, and I pondered the relative merits of cutting it out of its frame as opposed to lifting it, frame and all. I was busy contemplating grand larceny when the desk clerk asked if he could help me. "Sorry," I said. "I was looking at the painting." "Our mascot," he said. He was a man about 50, wearing a dark green silk shirt with a flowing collar and a string tie with a turquoise slide. His hair was just for men black, and his sideburns were longer than fashion would have them. He was clean-shaven, but he looked as though he ought to have a mustache, and as though it ought to be waxed. "Poor Eddie Horvath painted him," he said. "Such a loss when he died, and so ironic."